Hey everyone, welcome to my new video on JavaScript concepts. Today's concept we're going to be talking about is optional chaining. So in optional chaining, this concept is mainly used for specific scenarios whenever you have a complex object that you want to go through and you don't actually want to encounter any errors throughout your code. Now, usually this error will come up in the form of cannot read property of undefined, and this issue could usually happen whenever we have a complex object such as an object with nested values, and then within it there's multiple objects, etc. So as usual, I'm going to go through the example 1, example 2, and a use case scenario, and hopefully if you guys want to also keep along through a written tutorial, I have one in my GitHub repository along with the code that's also available in my GitHub repository. So please do check that out in the link below in the description. All right, let's get started with example 1. So in example 1, we're going to be using an object person which has the name, the age, and the address. Now you'll notice the address is actually a nested object, and you'll notice there's not a scenario where we'll actually encounter an error, because in this example I'm just trying to show how everything would work if everything was running perfectly fine. So if we would run this perfectly fine, we'll notice we get the exact output as intended, the John 30 Main Street, New York, etc. Now, what will happen if we change address to null? And on top of that, we don't actually change this log. So what if someone is doing an if statement and they're trying to check person.address.street exists, and then what happens is we end up going to that error. Cannot read property street of null. So it's basically telling us that we can't read whatever street is or whatever the city is or whatever state, because what happens is we end up with the person, we get this object, and then when we try to access address, we get null. So then what's ending up is address is becoming null. So null.city would always end up with an undefined. Similar would be an undefined.city, etc. How we counteract this is instead we put a question mark here. So a question mark before the period actually changes the message itself. So how it works is that it would read the object before it goes to the period. So in this case, when we reach person.address and address is null, the question mark checks if that address is null. If it is null, then what happens is we just return undefined for this entire statement. And you can actually chain this even further if there's a nested object such as a address dot license dot etc. You can just put multiple question marks. So I can put one here, for example, although it won't make really much of a difference because person's already defined here at all times. But if we run this now, you'll notice that we get John 30 and 3 undefined. So that's how optional chaining works. Really useful tool to prevent you having any errors while you're running code on an asynchronous environment, or if you need it to run without any errors and you can just catch if statements like this. In example 2, very similar, except we're just going to go a little bit more deeper, and it could show you how we're using multiple question marks throughout the entire thing. So obviously in this scenario, you'll get address.country.name, which exists, United States. However, we can remove all of this, country, and we can still end up with undefined in this case. So if we were to run this, I'll put this on node, it will still return undefined, because in this scenario, we have person.address, which exists. However, person.address.country does not exist. We could actually take this even more further, and if we remove address, since how I mentioned earlier on, the nested question marks would still perform perfectly fine. So if we run here, we'll get another undefined. So as you see here, this can work in this scenario, and it could help you with a lot of your use cases. Let's go actually to a use case that I provided over here. Let's just say you're a person, etc., all information, and you have a driver license. And in that driver license, there's an expiration date, etc., and you want to access that. In this case, if we run this code right here, well, again, undefined in this case, because right now what it's doing is actually reading the driver license here, and it's saying that person.driver license does not exist. If null is not existing, return undefined rather than checking the expiration date. So That's all that I have for optional chaining. It's a very simple but very useful tool that you can use in your JavaScript code. Hope this video helps you guys. Have a great day. Thank you all and see you next time.